Hi guys, welcome. And who dat? I'm Joe, and today we're going to be looking at the complete roster post draft for our beloved bless you boys in black and gold, the New Orleans Saints. I don't know how many Saints providers are going to actually pull up the entire list, both offense and defense, and take a look at the entire body of players on the team, but that's what I like to do here after the draft. Subscribe to my channel, Rosenfield 10, and you'll get all the videos I do about our Saints. I love the Saints as much as you do. You leave your comments and let me know what you think. And these videos are to let you know what I think. And this is a video to present the entire roster. So we're switching from a 4-3 to a 3-4 defense. And it's kind of difficult for me to imagine what our defensive players are going to play in this new system. So I was depending on NewOrleansSaints.com to give me those answers, but they don't. They still have players on the roster for the Saints that I know we've cut. So that's weird. And then when you go to the depth chart at the official New Orleans Saints website, the depth chart is still presented as on defense a 4-3. So yeah, they're not updating that site at all. So I go to NFL.com. I look at the roster for the Saints. Then when I click on depth chart, it sends me to NewOrleansSaints.com. So I'm not getting any answers from NFL.com or NewOrleansSaints.com. I go to ESPN.com, and if you click on the Saints depth chart there, they do present it as a 3-4. But some of the players are in positions, and I'm not quite sure if this is really happening or not. So what I did was I took the 3-4 alignment that ESPN had, and I kind of made some changes to it to make it fit better in my mind. But this is really what I've got to go on. But first, before we hit the defense, let's take a look at the offense. All right, there it is, guys. I don't have a slot for fullback. I've got extra slots for halfbacks and tight ends. We have so many of them. And as far as the offensive line goes, there's a lot of moving pieces. So let's start from the top and work our way down. Quarterback. We have Derek Carr. We have Tyler Shuck. We have Spencer Rattler. We have Jake Hayner. And we have invited to camp Hunter Deckers. So he's not officially signed, but I included him on the 13 UDFA video that I did. I included Hunter Deckers. I also included wide receiver Chris Carpenter, who has been invited to the camp as well. So, quarterback. As long as Derek Carr is on the roster, I'm going to have him put, up top as the starter if he doesn't have surgery and he's not on IR for the whole year and he's still on the dang team. Mickey Loomis said, yeah, Derek Carr would be our starter. Well, I'm assuming we're going to cut Derek Carr post June 1st kind of thing, something like that. But if that doesn't happen, if Derek Carr manages to weasel his way back onto this roster, inside the locker room and actually on the sidelines or whatever for this year, I don't know how any of that's going to work. The man has surgery. He stays on the team the whole year, even though he doesn't play. I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't think he's got any trade value, especially with the injury hanging over his head that he's so, proudly told everybody about. So I don't see the trade value. I don't see us trading him. I see us just cutting him post June 1st. But he's on the list. And if Carr manages to be injured all year, or if we actually do cut him, then I'm certain Tyler Shuck is going to be our starting quarterback. This is Kellen Moore's choice for quarterback, his hand-picked guy. I don't think he wants to go with Kubiak's Rattler or with Carmichael's Hayner. Yeah, sure, there'll be a competition in camp. I just don't think a fourth round pick and a fifth round pick are going to beat out the second round pick, especially Kellen Moore's hand-picked guy. So whatever you think about Tyler Shuck, I'm predicting that's going to be our starting quarterback, and we're just going to go through the bumps and bruises. Now, if we do get rid of Derek Carr, I'm pretty sure we're going to sign a veteran. Ben DiNucci isn't here anymore. If we go out and get a veteran, it'll probably be a veteran who's started games in the league. And maybe we do put him as the number one quarterback, sacrificial lamb kind of thing, and give Tyler Shuck a chance to get the NFL under his belt, right? Well, we'll see. That's what I'm leaning towards. We cut Derek Carr post June 1st. We sign a veteran quarterback, and either that veteran starts or Shuck starts, depending on how soon you want to throw Shuck into the fire. The 40th overall pick in the second round, Tyler Shuck should be out there learning. So that's quarterback. Let's look at halfback. Alvin Kamara, Kendre Miller, Edwards Hilaire. I had to abbreviate Edwards. Jordan Mims, Devin Neal, Velus Jones Jr., Xavier Valladay, Marcus Yarns. All right. Valladay, I think he was an undrafted guy last year. Velus Jones Jr., we just signed. He is a running back / wide receiver type. Marcus Yarns is an undrafted guy that we just signed. And then you have the top of the roster with starter Alvin Kamara, who's definitely going to be our starter. We're looking for the backup running back. Kendre Miller can't stay healthy. He can't seem to put it all together. Apparently, he changed his jersey number this year, so maybe that is a sign of change to come. But Miller's going to have to he's going to have to do something special to keep the number 2 job here. I think Clyde Edwards-Hilaire is a guy as a veteran who would be a really good piece to keep. A veteran guy backup to keep. If something happens to Kamara, at least you have a veteran in Edwards-Hilaire who can start a few games for you and carry half the load. Does that make Clyde Edwards-Hilaire the best option for the number 2 spot? I don't know. I think that Clyde Edwards-Hilaire on this team makes sense. Kendre Miller's hurt for half the year. At least you got a guy in Edwards-Hilaire who's been there, done that. And I like the fact that a veteran can be here in case Kamar gets hurt. And Jordan Mims, maybe the practice squad is where he ends up again because I believe 6th round pick Devin Neal is going to have a real shot at being on this team and being on the active roster come the start of the season. So what I'm predicting here is Alvin Kamara, Kendre Miller, Clyde Edwards-Hilaire, and Devin Neal. And then these other guys can be fighting for a practice squad spot. If we decide to cut bait with anybody, we released Jamal Williams right after the season. I don't know, man. Kendre Miller being a 3rd round pick after 2 years of injury plague and lack of production when you're out there. I mean, he looks good running the ball, but he looks confused. Now he's going to be learning another system, his 3rd system in a row. Maybe you don't cut bait with him just yet. Maybe you give him a year to get this system under his belt and see what he has in his final year of his contract. But for right now, that's the 4 I've got pegged for running back. Kamara, Miller, Edwards-Hilaire, Devin Neal. I don't have a fullback here. We don't have a fullback on the team. I believe that whoever lines up as a fullback is going to actually be a tight end. Let's look at the wide receivers first, real quick. Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, Brandon Cooks, Cedric Wilson Jr., Bub Means, and Kevin Austin Jr., Mason Tipton, Moochie Dixon, Chris Tyree, and the camp invite for Chris Carpenter. All right, the young guys this year. Undrafted Moochie Dixon, he's 5'11". Undrafted Chris Tyree. I think he's 5'10", 5'11". So a couple of small guys. Chris Carpenter, I believe he's 5'11" too. I mean, I don't think any of these guys are over 6 feet. You got Cedric Wilson, who's 6'1", 6'2". Bub Means is a 6'1" guy. Kevin Austin Jr. is a 6'1", 6'2" guy. So it's not like we don't have anybody with a height above 6 feet. It's just we don't have a 6'3", 6'4" guy. We don't have a big body, thick Michael Thomas type. And I figured that was something we would address. And if we couldn't get it in the draft, I figured we would get it as for a rookie free agent. The draft ends and Nick Nash is still out there from San Jose State, and Armstrong still out there from Arkansas. Brew McCoy still out there for Tennessee. And I'm thinking we're going to get one of these guys. No, the people we immediately invite are smaller guys as well. So we'll see how it's all going to work out. You know, maybe Kellen Moore doesn't need a big bodied wide receiver. Maybe he can put Cedric Wilson and Kevin Austin in that spot and they'll be fine. Or maybe one of the tight ends can flex out there and it'll be fine. We'll have to wait and see. We'll have to see this offense and how it operates. But certainly you're going to keep Olave, Rashid, and Brandon Cooks. And I'm pretty sure your backup three are going to be Cedric Wilson, Bub Means, and Kevin Austin Jr. I don't think anybody else after that has the ability to really crack the lineup. Bub Means has to stay healthy. I'm thinking they're expecting a lot out of Kevin Austin Jr. to take a step forward from last year. And I believe Moore thinks Cedric Wilson is a guy. Cedric Wilson had success under Moore in Dallas, and maybe Cedric Wilson provides that piece that we're looking for, a bigger body type. And you got the undrafted guys, not to mention Mason Tipton, who hung around after being undrafted last year. Wide receiver is interesting. I think there's still a big body that you're missing, a guy that can produce. Everyone's pointing at Keenan Allen, the free agent. It might cost you 10, 11, 12 million a year to get that guy. And we have the money to do it. And Keenan Allen has had success in Kellen Moore's system before. So I think that's a move that's going to happen here soon. We signed Keenan Allen. He becomes one of the 6 wide receivers we keep. And then Bub Means and Kevin Austin Jr. are fighting for a roster spot with Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen's going to come in here and have a roster spot. I don't know if Moore cuts bait with his buddy Cedric Wilson right away. So it looks like, yeah, it's practice squad for either Bub Means or Kevin Austin Jr. And they probably both did just enough to garner some kind of consideration by other teams, especially if they're just sitting on our practice squad. But wide receivers are a weakness for this team. So, yeah, that's one to look out for. We're going to keep an eye out on Keenan Allen and the bottom of this depth chart at wide receiver to see what happens. Tight end, oh yeah, Juwan Johnson, Foster Moreau, Taysom Hill, Jack Stahl. We got Jack Stahl as a run blocking guy from Philadelphia. He assumed a lot of that responsibility, and I think that's why Kellen Moore signed him and brought him here. I think Jack Stahl is the missing fullback on this team. And we've seen Foster Moreau line up at fullback. We've seen Taysom Hill line up at fullback. Juwan Johnson's probably done it too. But Stahl's a really good run blocker. So I think he's the odd man in right now. I think that there's a place for Stahl, regardless of what, however else the rest of this tight end room shakes out. I think Juwan Johnson, Foster Moreau, Taysom Hill, Jack Stahl. Taysom might start the year injured. He might not be able to hit the roster, hit the field for, until after the season starts, maybe a month or two, or we don't know anything about Taysom yet. But that's my assumption that we're going to start the season with Juwan Johnson, Foster Moreau, Jack Stahl, and possibly Dallin Holker, or if one of these other three guys can beat out Dallin Holker for that fourth spot, Moliki Mataval and Trevton Welch and Michael Jacobson. Those three guys are going to be competing with Dallin Holker for the fourth tight end spot, and that's only going to be an active roster spot until Taysom Hill comes back. Whichever one of those four players actually makes the active roster is going to end up on the practice squad once Taysom Hill comes back. But I think your four tight ends, when it's all said and done, will be Johnson, Morrow, Hill, and Stahl. Let's look at the offensive line. And here's where it gets weird because a lot of these players can play multiple positions, and we're not sure what our starting five is going to look like. We'll start with tackle, Taliese Fuanga, Trevor Penning, Kelvin Banks Jr., Landon Young, Josiah Ezerim, Easton Kilty, Josh Ball. All right. Before I talk about where these guys get placed, we're going to look at the interior offensive linemen too. Eric McCoy, Cesar Ruiz, Dylan Raduns, Will Clapp, Nick Saldiveri, Kyle Hergo, Torricelli Simpkins III. Okay. That's all the offensive linemen. Let's start in the interior. Eric McCoy is our starting center. We have a viable backup now in Will Clapp who can play guard and center. I figure Clapp will be our initial immediate backup center. But Nick Saldiveri has played center before. Kyle Hergel has played center, or we're talking about at least practiced it for the Saints and played it in a situation, whether it be training camp or preseason for the Saints. So at center, you've got Eric McCoy, Will Clapp, and technically Kyle Hergel and Nick Saldiveri. So you've got options at center now. Interior offensive lineman, Cesar Ruiz, your starting right guard, but we don't know who the starting left guard is. I have Dylan Raduns as our starting left guard right now, with Nick Saldiveri closing the gap. Kyle Hergel's participating. Will Clapp has the experience to do it. And I have Torricelli Simpkins at right guard. That's where he played his whole career, and I figure he'll start there. Who's going to start at left guard? Well, if it's not Raduns, I seriously doubt Saldiveri's going to beat out Raduns for left guard. If it's not Raduns, then possibly moving a tackle to guard. Keep in mind, Raduns has experience playing tackle as well. So you go to tackle, that's where the issue is. Fuanga and Penning are your starters. We just drafted Kelvin Banks. So you got Landon Young, who can play both tackle spots and both guard spots. Landon Young was a great re-signing for the Saints. That's a swell 6th-round pick from a few years ago. Okay. He learned how to be a good backup tackle, and then he learned how to play guard, and he learned how to play both sides of the line. And when it was time to re-sign him, he was valuable enough to re-sign. So in my opinion, that's a hit in a draft. If you can get a 6th-round pick like Landon Young, who sticks around, stays on the active roster, can be the 6th offensive lineman, then learns how to play 4 different positions. Yeah, you re-sign that guy to real cheap and he's good to go. I love plug and play Landon Young being back on this team. I had to say that. And of the other guys that are backups at tackle, Ezerim being a 7th-round pick last year, we've got Easton Kilty and Josh Ball. I know Kilty has experience playing guard too, so Kilty has a chance of making this team because of that versatility. I'm not sure about Josh Ball at all. So let's talk about who goes where. It's basically down to who's better, Raduns at left guard or Trevor Penning at right tackle. That's the way I'm looking at it. If your top 5 guys include Trevor Penning at right tackle, then I think you put Kelvin Banks at left guard. And then after this year, you let Penning go. And then we can put Banks at left tackle and move Fuanga to right tackle. And then we'll figure out left guard after next year. But I think you've got the pieces to figure it out now. If Trevor Penning is a weak link at tackle and you think you're better off starting Reduns at left guard, then you start Kelvin Banks at left tackle. You move, excuse me, you move Fuanga back to the right side. And then Trevor Penning is just our number 6 guy, primary backup. Maybe Penning tries to learn guard, and maybe Penning competes with Reduns at left guard. Could happen. I think it's kind of nuts. Penning learned a whole new position last year, and now he's going to have to learn a whole new position this year. Maybe he looks good at guard, but I think we would have tried him out at guard before if that was a possibility. I just don't see the fit. He's really tall to be in the middle of the, and that would be wild to me. If you put Penning at left guard and he played even as good as he did last year, that would be wild to me. It certainly would make his value skyrocket on the free agent market if he showed that kind of, versatility. So I think the best case scenario for the Saints is to let Trevor Penning stay where he's at right tackle. Give him another full year. He had 1 year there. He looked fine. Let's see if he can increase leaps and bounds this year. And for the time being, just slide Kelvin Banks at left guard. You put Kelvin Banks at left guard, you have your 5 best offensive linemen out there. Now, is Reduns better at left guard than Trevor Penning is at right tackle? That's the question. Because if Reduns is holding up at left guard just fine, kind of like the way Trevor Penning was at right tackle last year, then you go ahead and start your awesome left tackle at left tackle. You put Fuanga back at right tackle. And then, Penning's riding the bench or being a backup until we cut him next year. That's what's going to happen. Another option actually is what if Reduns can beat out Penning at right tackle? That's an option too. Then you'd have Kelvin Banks at left guard and Reduns at right tackle. Either way, we're going to have the 5 best players out there. I'm certain that's going to include Kelvin Banks Jr. So we're just trying to figure out what we're going to do with that 5th spot. Will it be Trevor Penning at right tackle? Will it be Reduns at left guard? Or will it be Reduns at right tackle? Or will it be Trevor Penning at left guard? Those are the 2 main players we're looking at, Reduns and Penning. Ooh, may the 5th best man on the offensive line please stand up. For right now, I do have Banks at left tackle behind Fuanga, and we're going to see how all of this works out. Great. All right, that's your offense. And yeah, I don't know if anybody's going to pull up the whole list and show you and then talk about every position, different nuances. That's what I'm here for. I watch all these Saints content providers, and what used to drive me crazy and why I started my channel focusing on the Saints was to just present the stuff. Give it to me to look at. Then none of them, they all treat it like a podcast and they don't give me the list to look at. I like lists. I make cheesy lists. These aren't great graphics. This is just convenient. I'm probably only going to get 3 minutes of views on this video because all you got to do is fast forward to where I pull up the list and you look at it yourself and then you go. All right. But I promise you, this is slightly better than going to the actual sites because none of them had it right. Even as ESPN, who actually had the formation right, had some questionable placement of players on that list. So we're going to look at the defense, and bear with me if it looks strange at first, because I am basing this off of ESPN, but I'm also throwing in my own kinks. So here is our projected, in my mind, 3-4 defense. And a lot of this was exactly what ESPN had. Now, where I made the changes on this defense was in the front 3. ESPN had Colin Saunders as the starting defensive end, and they had Nathan Shepard as our starting nose tackle. Now, that is weird to me. Nathan Shepard is a tackle. Colin Saunders is a tackle, but Colin Saunders is the big boy. He looks like the guy that would be more suited for nose tackle. Well, if he's not suited for nose tackle, he's going to make one hell of a defensive end because he gets after the passer okay for as big as he is. But I've never really seen any of these guys stop the run good enough for me to think that's why you put Colin Saunders out there. So I think the best place for Colin Saunders is at nose tackle. I certainly think the best place for Nathan Shepard is on the end. But they also had John Ridgeway and Christian Boyd listed as defensive ends. The only nose tackles they had were Nathan Shepard and Davin Godchow as the backup. And I thought this is weird. They may have had Ryder Anderson as a nose tackle too, which he's 280 pounds. So I did a little switch up here and I listed these players differently initially, but basically what it comes down to is everybody listed here at defensive tackle or defensive end have the ability to flex around. They can play on the edge, they can play in the middle. So these are the bigger bodies. And it's the way that I think makes sense to me. Your starting ends being Cam Jordan and Nathan Shepard. They're the best against the run. And Brian Bresee comes in as a pass rusher and comes in early and often. Vernon Broughton is a guy that to me is gonna, and ESPN has him listed as an end. Vernon Broughton is, I think, a guy that's gonna compete to be that nose tackle. Devin Godchow can start on early downs, and when he needs a breather, you bring in Vernon Broughton. If it's passing situation, maybe you do slide Brian Bresee or Nathan Shepard inside. Vernon Broughton can work on the outside in run fits too. John Ridgeway and Christian Boyd, to me, those guys are nose tackle or bust at this point. I don't see enough movement out of them to think they're going to play on the edge. Ryder Anderson is the smaller guy. Omari Thompson is another undrafted guy that I have out at end. So I think your starting ends are Cam Jordan and Nathan Shepard, and your immediate backups are Brian Bresee and Vernon Broughton. That's the what I'm looking at. And your nose tackle can be Devin Godchow, Colin Saunders, John Ridgeway, Christian Boyd, and Vernon Broughton can get in there as well. So that's your defensive line, and you can shuffle it up any way you want. I've told you what ESPN did. I explained why I made the moves I wanted to make. This makes more sense to me. Now let's get to that outside linebacker. This is the crazy part. Do we have any true outside linebackers? I want you to consider defensive end and outside linebacker as basically the same thing, just an edge player. Because when you look at the guys I have listed at true outside linebacker, none of them are outside linebackers. They're all defensive ends. They're all smaller defensive ends. All of our linebackers are shoved in the middle here, and this is exactly how ESPN had it. So our outside linebackers are Pete Werner, and then sometimes we would play Anthony Orji, DeMarco Jackson, Nefi Sewell. We would play those guys at outside linebacker. If we need a true outside linebacker who's going to cover, I don't think it's any of the guys I have listed here. These guys are all defensive end pass rushers. I don't know if any of these guys can cover as an outside linebacker. You have a true fit for a linebacker on the outside, and he's going to be asked to cover. That's going to be really hard on a guy like Carl Granderson or Chase Young, I think. Yep, but if you put Pete Werner out there in that position, then you're going to figure that's what the guy's out there to do, cover. Same thing with Orji or Jackson or Sewell. So how is Brandon Staley going to work this defense? If we need a true outside presence in the middle of the field at a linebacker position, it might just be dropping a safety. And Staley has a position called the star position, which is basically a guy that lines up around where the linebacker lines up, but he's actually able to play cornerback, linebacker, safety, and nickel. He can do it all. Oh, we have to have some guys that can do it all. Well, what we have at outside linebacker right now are just edge rushers, and we'll see. Some of these guys will play actual defensive end, and yeah, let's look at it. Chase Young, Carl Granderson, Jonah Williams, Fadil Diggs, Isaiah Foskey, Jasheen Davis, Chris Rumpf II, and Tyreen Powell. Tyreen Powell's an actual linebacker, and then Chris Rump can play linebacker. But most of these guys after that were listed as defensive ends. Carl Granderson, Chase Young can put their hand in the dirt and get up on the end. If we go to an even front, of course, any of these guys can be that edge rusher on the line. And in the middle, we have all the linebackers, true linebackers: Demario Davis, Pete Werner, Danny Stutzman, Jalen Ford, Anthony Orji, Nephi Sewell, DeMarco Jackson, Isaiah Stallbird. So who's going to play that star role? I think it's got to be somebody who has coverage ability, somebody that can function in multiple positions. So Isaiah Stallbird's an interesting guy to me. He is a tweener safety slash linebacker. And I think we tried him out at linebacker. We tried him out at safety and settled with him at linebacker, or we tried him out at linebacker, settled with him at safety. I don't remember how any of that went. He didn't get a lot of playing time, but under all of the depth charts that I've seen, he's listed as a linebacker right now. And it's that kind of joker role that I think Stallbird might be able to show something with in this new defense. So we're going to see how that works. Most of the players that are potential for that star position are in the secondary. So let's look at the secondary. It's going to come from mostly your safety position. Tyrann Mathieu, Justin Reid, Jonas Sanker, Jordan Howden, J.T. Gray, Millard Bradford, Ugo Amadi, and Elliot Davison. Ugo Amadi can be listed as a nickelback, a cornerback, or a safety. He is a guy that is, in my opinion, fit for this defense. A guy that can line up and then mix and match and all of a sudden switch responsibilities and do something else. Ugo Amadi might prove to be valuable in this defense. I'm looking forward to it. Tyrann Mathieu, same thing. We talk about him being good at the line. We talk about him being great in the middle of the field, just looking and trying to make plays. And he's probably one of the better, deeper guys too, even though, I don't know if we have a great deep guy. I think Jordan Howden's best spot is deep. But Jonas Sanker is a guy that we feel like can play this joker role well too. He's got coverage abilities, but he's a thumper in the middle. So yeah, assuming the role of a linebacker type seems to fit for Jonas Sanker. And Justin Reid is supposed to be flexible enough to play deep and at the line, so he's going to be involved in all of that. And like I said, Ugo Amadi seems perfect for it. Do we have anybody like that at cornerback? Sure, we do. Alontae Taylor. Alontae Taylor is a nickelback in our minds. A lot of people see him project to be a good safety. And he's played on the outside, whether we like what he's done in professional, real games or not. In training camp, on the outside, Alontae Taylor showed up and looked great all the time. Yeah, he was shutting out our wide receiving core, including Chris Olave. Maybe it's not a great thing, but he has ability on the outside. So Alontae Taylor, to me, that's a great spot in this defense for him. Put him anywhere and then have him switch if he has to, when the ball is snapped and you're not sure where he's going to be. And I'm pretty sure he's pretty good at all of it. Kool-Aid McKinstry, I don't know. I don't think he fits on the inside very well. He may be stuck on the outside. And I don't know if Brandon Staley's defense functions that way. I'm sure certain plays you're going to have outside corners and inside corners. Nobody's going to be switching up. So for your typical formation, Alontae Taylor, Kool-Aid McKinstry on the outside, Isaac Yiadom, Rico Payton on the outside. You've got Rajon Wright, Quincy Riley, Dallas Beanham, and Travion Fluellen. I don't know how well any of those guys would function in Staley's defense, with the exception of Quincy Riley, who people project as a nickel, and I don't think he's good enough at tackling to really make it at nickel. But he did do a lot of mix match at Louisville last year, so he fits into this scheme. He's able to transition from corner to safety or from nickel to safety or from outside to inside or from safety to nickel or whatever. So Riley's a guy I'm going to have a focus on early on in the process. I think he finds the field, especially if he can solidify his tackling. I think Alontae Taylor and Quincy Riley and Ugo Amadi are, and then Tyrann Mathieu and Sanker and Reed. These are all guys who seem like they can be nice pieces in this new defense. We have to see how the defense looks all together. But this is the cluster at defense right now, and yeah, and that's it, guys. That's our offense. That's our defense. We have some punter competition now. I don't know who the new punter is. I haven't looked that up yet. And we've got the kicker battle that's been going on with Charlie Smith still on the roster. So we'll see what happens. That's your offense. That's your defense. I think it's interesting to try to figure out who's going to play where. So you go back to this video and pause it on the defense and try to work those players out where they fit best for you. And then in preseason, it's probably going to be a vanilla version of this defense. So we're not really going to know unless we go back into Brandon Staley's career and try to, figure it out like we're all doing now. We're not going to really know until we see these games played. So lots of interesting things, especially since we re-signed so many Saints that were already on this team. Re-signed them as if we had a role for them already in this new defense. We'll see how it all turns out. I'm Joe. Subscribe to Rosenfield 10 for more videos about the Saints. Give it a like, give it a thumbs up. I need all the help I can get. And I'm part of the Who Dat family, and I like to treat Saints fandom as family. Everybody has different opinions, and some people get really testy. Some people don't like when you have a different opinion. And I'm willing to listen to whatever opinion you have, and I'll try to see it from your point of view. I might not agree with it, but I'm not going to, chastise you for it. So that's what I'm here for, guys. This is the time of hope and faith for the Saints. Why be miserable all year long? Let's at least enjoy this part of it. Maybe you see the writing on the wall. Maybe the end of the tunnel is black instead of light. But I'm going to be happy. And whenever we've got the facts, I'll be rough on them too. Trust me. Subscribe, guys. Leave your comments. Until the next one. I'll talk to you later. Who dat?